Summer. Finally a break after the university. I was a young 20 years old man, always used to staying inside his room, looking at the world from the screen of his computer. But there it was. The day I'll finally discover Asia. I had no idea of what was going to happen to me, but the best was yet to come.
Cool and clear. It's a season of change, and the night we waited for is here. We've exchanged the rings, and we've taken the vows. The ceremony's over, baby, oh, and the honeymoon is starting now. This is the first dance, but it won't be the last. Timeless moments like this, they won't ever be a thing of the past. We'll spark a candle tonight, an eternal flame of romance. But when the honeymoon is over, baby, I'll still move you like the first dance.
Everything started July 13th. I hadn't got much sleep the day before, and I was still trying to figure out what was going on around me. It was the first time I'd take the plane alone, and it didn't look like an easy task. But eventually, I found my gate and headed to Shanghai. The Shanghai Pudong Airport was an extraordinary thing to look at. It was pretty modern, and you couldn't drink water under 30 degrees. But I heard the airport was imagined by French architect Paul Andrew, which kind of makes you feel more comfortable. Being in a plane is a little scary, but staying in it for over 10 hours becomes very painful. Thank God the air company found a way to cheer things up a bit. After 15 long hours of wait, 4 movies and 4 meals, I finally landed in Taiwan. Boy, I felt numb. I realized that I hadn't slept that much during the flight, but it didn't matter. I was really excited to meet the other students. I then arrived at the airport, where I met David for the first time, a mechanical engineer student who was going to take care of us during the summer school. I also had to convert my US dollars into Taiwanese dollars, and I was scared I'd end up with a lot of money. But Taiwan's smallest coin is $1, so I didn't have too much cash to carry after all. The bus trip to the NCU went pretty well. I finally met some people I'd stay with, like Reda, a French student from Haas, majoring in maths, and 2 Hong Kong guys, Chiquan and Brian, studying math too.
Okay. Hello.
Right after unpacking, we all headed to a little restaurant where we'd have dinner, the right time for us to chat a little with each other and try figuring out where everybody came from.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Hello.
My first day at the NCU started smoothly. After a quick breakfast just below our dorm, we headed to class, except that our classroom was located at the other end of the campus. So we walked all the way there, discovering our new environment at the same time. The NCU had been ravaged by a typhoon a few days ago, but hopefully there were no casualties. Later I discovered our classroom, where we were going to have 3 hours of Chinese language courses every day. This is Guntae, and here's Kisum, both Korean students I'll study with in Class A. Yeah, we're all beginners in Chinese. The rest of the day passed by pretty fast, and I didn't really have time to realize where I was or what I was doing. I crashed on my bed after class and took a look at what was on TV. Wow, I didn't understand a thing. So I decided to go out and eat with our counselor David and Hayato, a Japanese student. We tried out some beef and noodle soup, which was delicious even if I had a lot of difficulties eating with chopsticks. My day ended after some pool games. I was surprised at how cheap it was because the fee was proportional to the time spent playing instead of the amount of games played. By splitting up the price, I think I ended up paying 20 cents for about 1 hour 30 of play. following day went pretty well. After visiting the campus, I joined the cultural course class where we created our own necklaces using nail polish. I started to feel more and more comfortable with my new classmates. Even if 10 of us were French, there were a bunch of Koreans and a lot of girls. This is Matthias, a French student studying Chinese back in Lyon and staying for 1 whole year at the NCU. And this is Adrian, another French student coming from the UTBM, which is the school in which I study engineering back in France. By the end of the afternoon, some people got the chance to present their creation in front of the class. I met Boran for the first time.
Hey, you I'm your friend, Boran.
Yes,
Yeah,
you are on film.
I hope to visit your country. And you do your best to be a million distract. Yeah, to study this university. Okay.
Oh, good. Thank you.
谢谢。
谢谢.
And your parents also hands.
What?
And I hope.
Later in the evening, we went out to visit Zhongli, which is the city where the NCU is located. I met Ava and Tim, 2 Taiwanese teacher assistants during the summer school, majoring in French. I also met Lynn, a counselor just like David, who was going to take care of us during the trip.
Oh wow, you know French too?
The temperature always rose from several degrees when we went to Zhongli downtown because of the heavy traffic and pollution. I was surprised to see that even at night, all the shops were still open and a lot of people were in the streets.
Hey, hello. I'm happy you came here. Okay. Oh, look at those huge.
It was kinda hard getting used to wake up every day at 8, but I started getting the hang of it. The morning language courses with our teacher, Eli, turned out to be a blast. Even if it was a little difficult to memorize all the new words she taught us, we always had deliciously entertaining breaks. I also got closer to Yuho, another Korean student who turned out to be very good in English, and my roommate, Matthew, who was a really awesome person. Later we had a quick stop at Family Mart. About time I introduced you to the other French students. This is Tiffen, Patrick, and Celine, all majoring in engineering in my school, the UTBM. Even if we studied on the same campus back in France, we didn't get to know each other before the trip. Matthew was also a former UTBM student and now works as an IT engineer. When the Taekwondo class started, I was a little scared. I hoped the teacher wasn't going to be too rough on us, but eventually everything went fine. After some warm-up, the teacher taught us some useful moves we could practice if we were in danger. Tammy and Brian helped to demonstrate, and the lessons ended up being very interesting thanks to David's effort to translate everything the teacher said. After a quick break, the counselors accompanied us at the Zhongli Night Market, a place swarming with people where we could buy a lot of clothes, oily treats, and even play some games. The fruits there were fresh and delicious, and had a unique flavor different from those in France. I was beginning to realize that Taiwan was a pretty special country, with kind and obliging people that would always do their best to help you. I was also getting closer and closer to the French students I met there, especially Matthew. But the Koreans were also so nice and welcoming that I wanted to know more about their culture. I went to bed exhausted, but with many plans ahead.
Fake product. This is fake. Fake.
Oh, fake.
Fake.
Half of the week had already passed, but so many things were still to come. It It was already Thursday, and we were getting ready to discover Aboriginal facts, dances, and songs from the former tribes in Taiwan. 2 Taiwanese girls, Celia, majoring in French, and her sister, both amongst the remaining 500,000 people of Aboriginal origins in Taiwan, were going to deliver the course. And I loved it. Celia sung so well I could just close my eyes and feel part of a tribe, chanting to the gods. After the songs came the dances, and boy I sucked. The men were supposed to show their strength and bravery, as the girls were expected to be soft and gentle. The whole choreography could be amazing to watch, providing the whole thing was done right. In the evening, I wanted to try out some of the drink in the neighboring shops around the NCU, and luckily Tim guided Adrian and I to try some of them. We all decided to go on a lemon and honey smoothie, and we didn't regret it. After, we went back to the guest house where our dorms were located and had a nice chat before going to sleep. On Friday, we made our first culture trip to Yingling, a district located south of Taipei City. It was a really awesome day. I was starting to know some of my classmates pretty well, and friendships were being built. I also discovered what a Taiwanese bus actually looked like. People could ask to sing a karaoke song during the trip, and we were on for a nice and groovy ride. We then made pottery using clay in Yingling Old Street, and it clearly wasn't as easy as it looked. We all had our own machines where clay was already set on. The first step was to shape your creation from the exterior using your whole hand. After, by placing my thumbs above my pottery, I was able to dig inside the clay to make it hollow. When our job was done, we decorated our pots and left them to be heated and dried for 2 weeks. And we went back to the NCU the same way we had come, with some cool karaoke songs.
Hello.
Hello.
Metro.
A little bit tired.
Yeah, me too. We
I
haven't
needed
really
something
started.
fun.
Yes, I agree with you. Can I check?
The weekend had finally arrived, and even if we were all very tired from our week, we thought it would be a good idea to go and visit Wulai, another district around Taipei that wasn't on our school schedule. The trip wasn't too much of a chore thanks to Eva's help, but it was still long though. Hopefully, a luxuriant and wild scenery was awaiting us. I was amazed at the peaceful view and surrounding quietness of the area compared to the city. But the trip wasn't over. In order to get to the top, we still had to take the cable car, after a walk in a small village. Even if we barely knew each other, Eva was always there when we needed help. She practically bought everything for us and prepared the trip the day before for nothing to go wrong. I had the feeling we would get along well with each other. We went to the Aboriginal village park and watched some dances. I could recognize some of the moves Celia taught us, and the choreography made some of us want to join the dancers. So Matthew, along with Eva, Tiffen, Celine, and Patrick, went to perform on stage, and it didn't always seem that easy to follow the tempo. Then we visited the park and had a lot of fun there. By the time we took the cable car back, I was getting really tired and was glad to find my bed back at the NCU, with many memories of the awesome day we just had.
You spent your mornings down by the track. You had the driver sign your arm. My husband's
Taipei City, finally. After visiting the National Taiwan University's huge campus, I headed to Taipei 101. 509 meters high, it is known for being the 4th tallest building in the world, and I was wondering what the city looked like from that height.
Celine and Annabelle.
This is Annabelle, and she is studying Chinese and literature back in France. Just like Rada and Matthias, she's staying for 1 year in Taiwan. Oh, I think the elevator is ready for us. Let's hop in. The elevator we were in is the fastest one on the planet and won a Guinness record. With a speed of 60 kilometers per hour, we went up the 100 floors in about 30 seconds, and I could feel my ears pop, just as if I was in a plane.
We are on the top of 101 tower. Hey,
So, this year,
she's here,
this year.
and I swear the tower is moving. I can feel it.
The view we had from the city was breathtaking. The other buildings looked so small compared to 101, and the tiny little cars we could see looked like toys with ants going in and out of them. The stability of the tower is maintained thanks to a gigantic sphere weighing over 600 tons and located at the top end of the tower. The sphere allows the tower to be less affected by natural disasters while still remaining flexible. After going to the outdoor highest peak of the tower, we slowly went back down to meet our friends and find some place to eat.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Toi aussi. Tu es beau. Tu es très beau.
Merci.
Tu es magnifique. You're really handsome.
In the evening, we went to the Longshan Temple, a really special place for the Buddhists right in the middle of Taipei. The unique atmosphere there was reinforced by the incense sticks burning in the night and regrouped at the same spot. I also noticed that people were throwing 2 pieces of wood shaped like a crescent moon while praying. Someone later explained to me that those pieces had a round and a flat side. The first step is to clearly think of a question you'd like to ask to a god. Once you've asked it, you can throw both crescent blocks. If one falls on the round side and the other on the flat side, it is a yes answer. But if both blocks fall on the same side, it means no. When I found 2 spare blocks abandoned on the side, I decided to give it a try. I wanted to know if I would have a more than friendly relationship with a Taiwanese girl. The first time I threw them, the 2 blocks fell on the same side. Disappointed by the answer, I decided to give it another try. But they fell on the same side again. Maybe it's not always good to try figuring out your future. The first day of our new week marked a new beginning. We had 6 hours of Chinese language courses, so it was going to be long, but at least it was a nice opportunity to take a break from all the trips we had made. Matthew, Annabelle, and I also had a presentation on the differences between Taiwanese and French desserts to prepare.
Delicious?
Delicious.
Bashisoyo. Delicious? Oh, okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So during the midday break, we went to a small snack store selling huge ice creams on campus to interview one of the employees there. She showed us a selection of desserts people were usually buying, and it was really kind to have us in the middle of her working day. And we even got one Oreo ice cream for free.
We're gonna buy some tools for our meal.
Yeah, we also wanted to bake a chocolate cake. But making a cake on campus was almost impossible for a student, so we just gave up doing it. Today we were going to customize and learn how to play with spinning tops, but not just the simple ones you can just spin with the tip of your fingers, but bigger ones, wrapped in thick cord and a bit more technical to use. But first, we had class. This is Young, a kind and smart student working with us. Yuho and some others had tried a nightclub in Zhongli the day before, and I could tell from his eyes that he was pretty tired. Adrian and Young, on their side, were ready to start.
Il est 15h40 et on fait tourner nos tours.
Finally, my long-awaited moment arrived, the spinning tops lesson. Once our top was ready, we had to wrap our cord tightly around it. To throw the top, one of the techniques was to swing your arm in parallel with the ground, then swiftly move your wrist back towards you to pull the cord. Yuho was about to try his luck on the big one. Due to its weight, he would have to pull the cord quickly to give the top enough initial spinning speed. But thanks to its inertia, it would spin longer. Still pretty good for a first try. And then the tournament started. The goal was to make your top spin for the longest amount of time. The day had been a blast. Even if I had had a lot of trouble getting my top to spin properly, the teacher sure taught us a lot of things, and I got a great deal of help from my Korean friends. 谢谢老师.
They are going to warm up the pot as well. So we only go
I'm filming.
It's not the same.
we learn pow, right?
Crash the truck,
Pow.
burnt the house down.
When you have the water in, that is wild.
Yeah, I'm
This
filming.
too many.
So leave it.
Alright.
We don't drink it.
Nobody died, but
And you have to do
Hi.
that's your top. Okay, the first 第一泡，不要第一泡，第二泡。Some which kind of tea. And normally
Wednesday, July 24th. It was hard to imagine I was already halfway through my trip. I was having a lot of fun and preferred not to think too much about the trip back. After Ili taught us how to make Chinese tea, Patrick, Celine, and Tifan made an interesting presentation on the differences between Taiwanese and French universities. In the afternoon, we had a Tai Chi lesson, and our teacher taught us some basic moves and stances. I nearly slept all day. Matthew and I had the bad habit of speaking until late at night when we got back to our dorm, and I was starting to feel the consequences of going too late to bed.
Makes no sense to me. Didn't have to be. I mean, if you could, would you then? No sense to me. Didn't have to be. I mean, if you could, would you then?
The next day we had calligraphy class, but I don't have any videos this time around, so I'll just sum things up with pictures. This is Lotus, the person who set up this amazing trip that I'll never thank enough for everything she did. Calligraphy is an art that is quite easy to learn, but extremely difficult to master. To perfectly draw Chinese ideograms, you must use your brush delicately. The key to writing properly is to make balanced symbols and accompany your strokes till the end. I gotta catch up with people I haven't introduced yet. Here's Anyong, a very sweet Korean student I met. Kisung and her make a lovely couple. This is Ara. Here's Kayon. And there's Grace. 3 lovely girls I enjoyed chatting with, even if their Korean names were sometimes complicated to pronounce. And this is Yannick, a great friend who comes from Burkina Faso and who had already stayed 6 months at the NCU. We really made a great group of Koreans, French, Taiwanese, and even Japanese people. This was the moment of our lives, a memory that we'd never forget.
So we made a bus stop and we're visiting a little village that was owned by Japanese people a long time ago. Yes? Hello? No, I can't. I'm filming now. Thank you. Hello, nice to meet you.
My second week had passed so fast. We started our trip to the south of Taiwan on Friday, July 26th, and had a lot of bus. But it was also a great opportunity to visit some places on the way. And we made quite a few stops, like on Hubi Lake, where we had a little boat ride, and I got pretty scared. The boat was moving so much because of the waves, I thought it was going to sink. But hopefully, we were able to go down to its lower level. From there, we should have had an amazing underwater view of the sea. But the water was a bit too cloudy this time around. Late in the afternoon, we arrived to the so-called Depending Tableland, where a beautiful and wild landscape was waiting for us. It was the perfect place to take pictures and stretch our legs a bit before arriving to our hotel. But our day wasn't quite over yet. We still had to check out Kenting's night market, which ended up being a pretty lively place to visit.
Non. Mais tu vas me le dire. On est où, Patrick? Voici Reda. Reda qui peut nous parler de son expérience arabico-taïwanaise.
Arrête de me filmer.
Alors Reda, est-ce que tu trouves que...
Melancholy was getting me. I had started to have some feelings for Tammy, but I felt stupid for behaving that way, knowing that I'll probably never see her again, in 1 week. Some things better be forgotten before they hurt too much. That day was going to be epic, but when I got out of the bus, I thought I'd instantly melt because of the heat. That's how it was, and everyone had to cope with it. So we began our walk to the Elwynby Lighthouse, at the southernmost point of Taiwan.
So this is our awesome counselor, Lynn. Without her, nothing would have been possible. This is David, our awesome counselor number 2. This is Lina, our awesome counselor number 3. And Tammy, our awesome counselor number 4. Thank you, Tammy. And Hersey, we can't see you. Hello, Hersey. I remember your names now.
If you don't remember my name, I'll be very sad.
Oh, sorry. But it's not a Chinese name, so I have less difficulty.
When we got there, a beautiful white building was standing in front of us, reflecting the sun's glare. We stayed there quite some time, and I was starting to feel something was in the air. In the afternoon, we went to the aquarium. Thank God we finally had a cooler place to rest. It was a huge museum showcasing many species of animals I had never seen, like the belugas. The sea lions were also pretty funny to watch. Too bad I didn't get to see the penguins because the place was way too crowded. Our journey to the south was about to end. We had done a lot of bus that day, but speaking with Chikwon made me happy. His efforts to speak English with me made me smile, and we went on discussing for a big part of the trip. He also showed me some games.
Come on, see it. You see someone attack me? Attack. Oh, attack. And then...
Oh my god. Okay, so first you kill it and then you... oh my god, you're full.
Next up came Nantu, where we learned how paper was traditionally made. We started by squishing plant fibers until they became muddy enough to be separated into thin pieces underwater. Once we had our mixture, We used a bamboo colander to recover the small pieces of fiber we had placed in the water. The last step was to place it in some sort of absorbing sheet that would retain all the water from the fibers. And there we had it, a fine sheet of paper that was just waiting to be dried before use. We headed back to the NCU after our stay in Nantou. The 3 days we had spent in the south had opened my eyes on other places in Taiwan, with breathtaking landscapes and genuine people. This trip had bound us all together in a special way. I had the feeling I had found a new family, a family I'd never stopped spending memorable moments with.
Japan is going to win. Is Japan better than Korea?
No.
No?
No.
No?
옐로 카드, 옐로 카드.
Oh,
한국어 옐로 카드.
sir.
옐로 카드.
Oh, and you like China.
Think about each other, miss each other. So this is also so this is lovers that we have to fix. Okay. Alright. You need the rice cooker. Okay. But there are different ways to make what is rice cooker. Okay.
We were born with sun in our teeth and in our hair. When we get bored, we like to sit around and stare.
Hardly had we come back from our trip that we already started a new day of class, but learning Chinese was everything but a chore. Our teacher, Yili, was also keen on theater and liked blending some drama practices, small games, or cooking lessons to our courses. Today, we were learning how to make red bean soup.
We wake up with the sun in our eyes.
During the midday break, we had pizza, one of the only times around where we didn't eat with chopsticks. It was a nice moment of sharing and chatting with each other about what we still planned to do before going back home. I only wanted one thing, to stay longer. Right after the break, we went to thank some of the people from the school. We had prepared a little present that put a smile on everybody's face. When the night fell, I got some ice cream at the snack store on campus. The mango bing was just too damn good.
People are still playing volleyball at this time. It's finally getting cooler, but at this time of the day, it's really nice to just go out. It's summertime, but the sun still sets at 7 o'clock, so it's pretty early compared to France. So we're Tuesday, and we're going to Taipei. Hello, RTA, Eva, fine, Timur. Hey, Baran, that's Rada. Oh, Rada.
Go there.
He said that he loved me. I love you too.
With Patrick, take a shower.
Mom, please take a seat. Bow down.
Okay.
Ready? Okay, I can see you love to go there.
On Tuesday, we went to Sansha to learn the process of dyeing cloth with the essence of a plant called the glory bower. Made up of small blue flowers, the glory bower was later used by people from Sansha to create a bluish mixture where cloth would be soaked into. They were then able to create magnificent symbols and shapes on the textiles they used thanks to the way they folded and twisted the cloth together. So we used rubber bands and small wooden sticks to create our patterns. The parts that were tightly brought together inside were to be bright, whereas the rest would be darker. We had to dip our creations in some barrels first, before letting them dry in the sun. The result was astonishing. Some students had made so beautiful patterns, I was in awe. But the smell was awful. By the middle of the afternoon, we had all made beautiful works with unique looks. Later, we visited the old street that was initially built by the Japanese at a time when they were fascinated by British architecture. I was amazed at how well the red brick style and semicircular arcs were imitated. Later, I also visited a temple with hundreds of lanterns hanging from its ceiling. We also met a funny guy in the street. In the end, the day had been way more interesting than I expected, and we started going back to our bus as the sun was setting. Sanxia had been a very peaceful and romantic place to visit, with narrow streets and a particular style. On our way back to the NCU, I could feel everyone was tired from everything we had done. I was wondering what the others will become when they'll go back to their home country, but I was convinced we'd meet again, one day in the future.
这位置有人坐吗？你好吗？很高兴认识你，我是大卫。
After Tim had helped me to pronounce my drama sentences correctly, we went out for our archery lesson, but the weather didn't look too good. In fact, it looked like another typhoon was coming, and the campus was getting dark in the middle of the day. But hopefully our archery lessons were indoors, and the storm ended up going away pretty quickly. Our teacher had already set up everything for us to practice shooting arrows, but there were still a couple of things he needed to teach us.
如果你射的箭在目标下面，箭在左边。
Once we were ready, everyone was grouped in pairs and we started shooting our arrows. Bending the bow wasn't always easy, but some people like Matthew seemed to be doing pretty well.
It's not and
archery. Oh, you see, it's very good for archery.
Kissing is better than
see.
Percy. No? Later means no, right?
Linda and Tammy were also doing a good job and even convinced Hersey to give it a try.
You got long nails, be careful.
By the end of the afternoon, everyone had found its own little technique to get their arrows on target, and we could finally rest our tired little arms back at the guest house. Thursday, the final drama presentations took place. We fully performed in Chinese and some groups had worked really hard memorizing their script. Tomorrow was going to be our last day at the NCU before going to the airport on Saturday morning. Our schedule had become a little lighter and we watched a Taiwanese movie about a drum troupe in the afternoon. The film was great. I learned a lot about the gods and the traditions in Taiwan, and our teacher had brought some pictures of a traditional event with deities that had just happened the day before. I went for the last time in Zhongli to take a look around and find souvenirs with Adrian. Thoughts were knocking each other in my head. I wanted to spend so much more time with people I had met during the trip, but every effort I made seemed useless now. When we came back, it was raining. One of the few times where I had that weird feeling of rain dripping on me. But it felt surprisingly good. This was my last day, the day we'd have our goodbye course and the night of our lives. In the morning, we had a special class with Eli, where we exchanged gifts with each other and were rewarded for our final dramas.
No? Here. No. How to use
30.
The morning passed by peacefully and was an amazing moment where we looked back at everything we had done together. In Chinese tradition, it is said that there is a God for human relationships, and it is thanks to that God that we were all together today. We closed our eyes and held tightly to each other in silence to enjoy our last moments together. Yeah, I had to get real. In 24 hours I'd be heading back to France, alone. I just couldn't believe I had to leave everyone behind. And so the day went, but I was extremely tired, so I went back to the guest house to take a nap. I woke up just in time before our goodbye party started. Matthew helped me getting dressed up, and here we were, along with everyone else, dressed with our nicest shirts. The ladies were also dazzlingly beautiful. In the evening, we all got our own certificates. The counselors were rewarded for their tremendous efforts, and we were thanked for having followed the 2013 Chinese language class. We had all passed with great grades, and I was really happy to have learned so much about the Asian culture.
If you're going to kiss her,
Asia had always fascinated me during my childhood. First with animation and the Japanese culture, but as I grew up, I realized there was more to it than just that. The people I had met during the trip were the most humble, the cutest, or funniest beings I had ever met. I lived amazing relationships I had never lived before, whether it was with my French mates, Asian students, or even teachers. The whole trip ended up being so much more than everything I could have ever expected, and my expectations were high. We had been the most awesome group ever, and everybody's personality will stay carved forever in my heart. It was the time for goodbyes. I couldn't stand the feeling of being separated from the others. Every single person I had met was special to me. One of the things I told my classmates before leaving was the following. Even if you hate yourself, you despise yourself so much because of who you are, because of the way you act or the way you look, forget all that. And keep in mind that that's what makes you special, and that someone around the world will love you for what you are. Even if life is hard, dark, and with no happy outcome, keep believing, keep fighting for what you love and for the people you care about. If you're about to let go, tell yourself it can't be worse. And if you're a person with no point in life, give it your all to live, because you have nothing to lose.